Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the sophomore album from Fifth Harmony called 727. Yep, folks, we're back here again. And I think there's some misconceptions that linger from the last time I covered Fifth Harmony and their debut album, Reflection. A review that angered a lot of people that I didn't like the album. And while I'm not surprised with the anger, I'm a little bit perturbed by the intensity, mostly because I've heard all this before. Now, to explain this, one of the foundational points of the review is that Fifth Harmony was plainly set up along with a Little Mix by Psycho Music in order to engineer competition and pull in piles of money. And given my positive reception to Little Mix, my review was quickly dismissed by some who would assume that I had some sort of stake in all this. The truth, unfortunately, a lot less interesting. Fifth Harmony's debut album, Reflection, just wasn't very good on its own merits, with by-the-numbers production that made some egregiously awful miscalculations, a vocal ensemble that had talent but was also unevenly balanced, and lyrics that ranged from forgettable to hysterical. And I don't blame any of the girls for that. Camilla remains the weakest singer by far, who got the lead far too many times, but it's not like she or the rest of the group wrote any of these songs, because, again, I've heard all this before. I've seen this done in the past, when they were called the Pussycat Dolls. It's actually kind of uncanny how many parallels that these groups have. Forgettable guest verses, a weak production, a popular leader who is nowhere close to the strongest singer of the group, and even a British counterpart miles ahead of them in every single way that they would never get the stateside attention that they actually deserve. Maybe it's because I actually remember the mid-2000s that I can speak to this, having seen pop group competition be engineered so many times before, but at the end of the day, I just want good music, be it from Fifth Harmony or Little Mix. I've got no stake either way. If the music's good, I'll say it. And yet, while Little Mix has pivoted back towards pop with diminishing returns off their 2015 album, Get Weird, Fifth Harmony looks to be in a much weirder state themselves, even despite the lead-off single Work From Home being their biggest song to date. For one, it actually looks like Simon Cowell gave this record a budget and hired on some bigger names for production and guest verses, which he normally doesn't do. And yet, the music wasn't seeming to get any better. Of course, the girls had no writing credits again on this album. Yep, keep calling it a more personal record, ladies. I'm not buying it. But Work From Home was the step towards R&B that had no personality outside of some unsettling lyrical implications. And if that was the direction 727 was going, I had a really bad feeling about this album. So was I proven wrong? Well, actually, a little bit. Now, I don't want to oversell this. This record did not turn me into a die-hard harmonizer or convince me that Fifth Harmony is anything more than a professionally groomed corporate calculation that hits bum notes far more often than they should. But you know what? This is an improvement upon Reflection. It's not a great album. Hell, I'd hesitate to call it even a good album. But despite its many problems, I'm starting to see some of Fifth Harmony's appeal, even if I don't quite share a lot of it, because, again, they're very much not for me. I'm starting to question who they really are for, but we'll get into that. So let's start off with the area that has improved and surprised me the most, the production. Now, one thing I've ranted about in the past is that Psycho Music and Simon Cowell in particular rarely will shell out the money to get top-of-the-line producers for their pop acts. And while I will not say that we're getting A-listers here, rumors of Max Martin's involvement appear to be greatly exaggerated. He has no writing credits on this album, but nearly half the record does have a Stargate production credit, and for the most part, they're on some of the better songs. More interestingly is the involvement of tropical house producer Kygo, whose debut album Cloud 9 I covered last week, and who easily gives Fifth Harmony some of their best ever production without ever overshadowing the girls. The liquid acoustics against the gentle bassy pop, faded synths and sleigh bells of Right On Me, or the sandy, snapping bounce of the great piano line of Squeeze. They're the sort of pretty and accessible pop ballads that show Fifth Harmony's potential. Hang in mind with the blurry guitar line that blends into the bass and rattling percussion of Scared of Happy, or the choppy reggae sample against the wiry low synth that breaks into the gleaming textures of All of My Head Flex. These songs actually work. Of course, in the last case, it's also because Fetty Wap shows up and just runs away with the whole song. Mostly because he seems like he's having more fun than really any of the girls on the album. And because he's playing into a scene that everyone can have fun too. It really is a much better fit than when Missy Elliott shows up on the album Closer, Not That Kind of Girl, which is a kiss-off song that treads frequently into obnoxiousness, and not just because the beat sounds imported from a bad Janet Jackson reject from the late 80s with a garish and blocky synth tone and bargain barrel vocal production. And that's the first frustrating thing about this album, how inconsistent the production is. That's My Girl might have initially got on my nerves with the chunky percussion with the tiny horn accents, but the big brazen hook is easily one of the most melodic and poppy on this entire album, whereas stripped back R&B minimalism, which they were trying for, frequently highlights a lot of problems, especially in the vocals. I've already talked about Work From Home on Billboard Breakdown, but then we've got the noisy percussion, muted chiptune, and pile up of chipmunk vocals that is the life, or the reverb swamped out I Lied that picks up hints of keyboards before a shrill DJ Snake-esque breakdown and the vocal production that only serves to hem these girls' voices in. So might as well talk about our 5 singers, and here's where I inevitably start the fan war in the comments, because from some of the harmonizer commentary that I've seen, they aren't entirely pleased that Camilla seems to be getting more time in the spotlight in comparison with the other girls. And here's the thing, the girls mostly get equal time, but Camilla does tend to get more of the hooks, and her voice tends to stand out more, mostly because she's by far and away the weakest link on Fifth Harmony. If anything, she's gotten worse since Reflection, mostly because the producers have tried to layer on more pitch correction onto her voice in order to compensate for how shrill and sharp she is, and only ends up drawing more attention to her, which is the last thing you want. And it's frustrating because the rest of the group seems to be growing up considerably and showing vocal progression. Normani remains my favorite with real soulful presence in her voice, with Lauren not far behind with a more mature tone, but I was impressed how much stronger Dinah has gotten, showing off more strident, borderline raw presence. Hell, it even seems like the producers figured out how to give Allie's huskier, slightly more unique tones the room to breathe. But whenever Camilla's voice cuts in, her more adolescent lack of polish does major damage to the atmosphere, and the lack of harmonic arrangements to blend her in remains a consistent problem with all of the compositions here. And on that note, let's dig into some of the writing and themes. One of the most aggressively frustrating issues that I have with Reflection, and arguably my biggest concern coming off of Work From Home, which has the girls playing demure and submissive sex kittens trying to lure their men home with dirty pictures that could get them fired, not helped by Dolla telling them to shake their ass so he can pipe it. Yeah, did I mention that song was written entirely by men? But it's one of those songs that illustrates an odd dichotomy about this record. You get songs about female empowerment like That's My Girl and We'll Work Through This Song, Gonna Get Better, or even the crass materialism of The Life or Not That Kind of Girl, where in the latter case we get this charming lyric, boy, I wanna like you, but it's better if you just don't speak. Charming. And it's kind of contradictory how all that flexing lines up with Gonna Get Better, how the girls are trying to reassure the guy that they won't leave him for a rich dude, even though all that money is clearly on their minds. But you know where it gets really bizarre is when you play some of these tracks up against some very vulnerable songs like Squeeze, which is really one of the most awkward words to describe a compassionate embrace, or Scared of Happy, which is also an awkward hook but does convey how one can be hesitant to find love after getting burned. And then there's Right On Me, where the girls are blank canvases and they're literally asking for their love to write on them, to literally define who they are. There are other nitpicks that I have. I lied, for instance, surrounding how the girls are so overwhelmed by feeling that they lied when they say they love this guy because love is not strong enough a word, and how the hell does that make any sense? But let's consider the bigger picture. Because while I don't have any problems that the girls want to play submissive of their own free will, again, I wish they were the ones writing these songs, but that's a different issue. I can kind of roll with it, but when they're surrendering so much control of their identities and then juxtaposing it with empowerment anthems, that's a hell of a mixed message. Incidentally, it's another reason why I like All in My Head Flex, because Fetty Wap is ensuring that they're flexing together. Sure, it's an ego trip for them in Fifth Harmony, but at least it's a mutual one. But at the end of the day, is anyone seriously looking at a Fifth Harmony record for thematic cohesion, especially considering they're more of a singles act? Most people aren't going to care about album cuts. Well, yeah, the teenage girls who arguably compose the vast majority of their fan base will be looking. And with that in mind, I've got a hard time giving my endorsement to this album. Yeah, it's an improvement on Reflection. The writing and production isn't as much of an embarrassment. It shows steps to defining a good sound. And minus Camilla, the group is showing some real vocal chops. But in good conscience, plus the fact that there really are enough problems in production and lyrics to keep me from endorsing this album completely, I really can't rate this any higher than a 5 out of 10. If you're a harmonizer, you probably already bought the album and disliked the video, but to everyone else, yeah, I'm not really sure I can recommend this. If you're a Kygo or Fetty Wap fan, I recommend you check out the tracks that they worked on, but otherwise, yeah, you're not missing much. Sorry. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I got the poll up here, so all you guys willing to tell me that I'm wrong, there's your opportunity. Otherwise, if there are any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, or anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.